One sec. Hello, everyone. Jimmy here from Nine Line Guy. Just getting everything set up. Frothy Friday. Woo! What a week. What a cracker of a week. And I'm super pumped to be doing a Frothy Friday. It's been ages since I've done one. Why is that doing this? Okay, Houston, we have an issue here. Let me just close this one down. Remove. There we go. It's Jimmy here, my online guy. Thank you for joining in. Now, I apologize in advance. I'm going to be sweating my box off in here. There's no aircon. I had to turn the fan off because it was too noisy. So if I'm sweating, I apologize in advance. I'm super excited. It's been ages since I've done a Q&A session. Ages. So guys, if you get a chance, jump on, ask your questions because I want to answer the questions. I've set a few guides to the questions I'm going to answer today. But, you know, as always, I'm here to answer any questions that may arise that you have as we're talking. So, guys, hopefully you're able to crack a beer. It's bloody hot today in WA. Masks are off as of 6 p.m., which is really good too. So, cheers, guys. All right. And apologize about the beer. It's all we had. Okay, so questions. Let's just get straight into it. I know there's a few people jumping on, so we'll just get straight into it. So the first question we had today was, why does SEO take so long? Bloody good question. I'm glad you asked it. So there's a common misconception when it comes to SEO. Oh, this beer's good. There's a common misconception when it comes to SEO, and that's that no one really sets accurate timeframes. Very few marketers set accurate timeframes for SEO. And the reason for that is actually a lot of people just don't understand how SEO actually works. They read a book, they listen to a story, they do a course, something like that, and they think they know SEO. And what happens is they know SEO until they don't, until something goes wrong, and then it all turns pear-shaped. But basically, depending on your niche and depending on what you're doing, SEO can take anywhere between 6 months and 10 years. It really just depends on the niche. But like if we say as an average, with most of my customers, my clients, I work off either 12 or 18 months to get the desired tangible goal, because you should always have a tangible goal when you do SEO. It may not be a specific revenue number, but it might be amount of leads or traffic numbers, things like that. So why does SEO take 12 months to do? And why is it still used if it does take so long to do? Well, I'll tackle the first question about how SEO actually works, because it's probably the one I answer the most as an agency. So basically, SEO, for those who don't know, is basically ranking in Google, putting your website organically in first place in a search result, generally below the ads and below the map. Now, why it takes so long to get to that first place is because ultimately Google makes almost all of its money, or I think it's called Alphabet now. Alphabet makes almost all of its money from Google Ads. That's why SEO takes so long to do. And if I explain, let me explain that. So basically, Google knows that if you get the best result for every search that you ever search, there is a better chance you're going to click an ad. That's why. And what I mean by that is basically, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about this beer. It's so good. Yeah, so basically Google wants to make sure that the best result for the search is done and can't be manipulated. That's the ultimate goal of Google with is search, is sell ads so people click on them, and they don't want their search engine being manipulated by people. They want to serve up the best result given the user experience requirements of the person searching. So what Google basically does, so like as an SEO, we'll rebuild your website, and then you hear a thing called on-page optimization. And on-page is basically, sorry, someone just messaged me then. On-page is basically, did I kill this? No. On-page is basically where you change things on the website itself or on the stuff you control to give Google signals that you are the best result for that search. So that's what on-page is. So we do, as a good SEO, you'll do all the on-page stuff, which is like hashtags, meta titles, internal linking, anything you can do to the website. Now, Google's just not going to trust that you have the best website on the internet based on what you do to it. So that's the first thing. But it does give signals to Google. The second thing you might hear a lot is off-page optimization, and that's basically anything you do to a website that's not on the website. So that's link building. You would have heard backlinks thrown around. Those are backlinks, social signals, authority signals, expertise, authority, and trust, press releases, sending signals. All those stuff is what's called off-page SEO. Content's on page, but like people linking to your content is off page. And that's like, they're the external trust signals, and they're harder to replicate. So Google puts emphasis on them, because if other people trust you and trust the content you produce, then generally the general community is going to trust what you do. There's the premise behind it. So basically what happens, right, is pretty much any website that's brand new, for the first 3 to 6 months, if it's a brand new website, it's literally not going to be in a search result. Google has a theoretical thing, and it's a very argued point amongst SEOs of the sandbox. And basically what that is like, my interpretation of the sandbox is that Google goes, well, you've told us you've got this flash website, you do all this stuff. We have no proof. We have never seen you before. So we're just going to keep you on the sideline for a few months, see how people react to what you do, see if we see any negative feedback about you. But we're going to keep you on the sideline for 6 months and just see how you perform. So then from there, they will, based on that and other factors and the competitors and other people in the results, they may place you on the 7th page. Say, for instance, let's say we're trying to rank for plumbers in Mandurah, and you're a brand new plumbing company, and you go straight into the search results. After the 6 months, after you've established, you've done your G&B listing, you've like posted a few times. Google goes, okay, well, this is a legitimate business. We're gonna, of the 100 results that I'm serving, I'm gonna put you on this in the 70th position. And so what happens then is Google goes, okay, we're going to put you in the 7th position. Today, we're going to try you in the 80th position. Tomorrow, we're going to try you in the 60th position. Today, on next week, we're going to try you in the 70th position. The week after, and then it takes all that data and the way people move through the site and the interactions. And then the data goes, okay, well, relative to the positions I tried you in, you are better than this competitor, you are worse than this competitor, or you are providing a better user experience than this competitor, you're providing a worse user experience than this competitor. All right, we're going to try you on position, so it's like, say 3 weeks, okay, we're going to try you in position 40, so 4th page. And then again, it will try you, we'll go, 38, up to maybe 29, back up to 70, try you in 80 again, then back to 40, rinse and repeat. So that's the first like 6-7 solid months of any keyword that is brand new, is the Google dance. You just get moved up and down in results over time, because Google knows that the one thing that an SEO, a search engine optimizer, that is basically what I do, the one thing I cannot replicate is time. They know that is the one thing that is almost impossible to fake. And guys, if you have any questions, if you want me to go slower or explain anything more, just whack it in the comments and I'll find it. But they know that's the one thing we can't fake as SEOs is time and saddle. So it puts a lot of emphasis on time. So it knows that there's no rush to change the results. It's not changing the results. G'day, Red Socials. Thanks for joining in. There's no rush on their end to change results. It's only us as a business that wants us to move through higher, but Google's got a perfectly good set of results there. Why does it want to change it? It only wants to change it if it gets enough signals to say that this website is worth changing into those positions. So like we're 6 months in, we've moved from the 7th page all the way to the 2nd page. Generally, is what happens in that first like 6 months. So you're on the 2nd page, and that's where the real rubber meets the road when it comes to ranking shifts, because everyone on that first couple of pages kind of deserves to be on those first couple of pages. Maybe not in the position they're in, but they've been tested against the other pages in that cohort of keywords. So, Charlie, thanks for tuning in, mate. Thank you for jumping in. Great SEO. Hopefully he doesn't pull me up on anything here. This is just my interpretation of how it works. So you're on the 2nd page, And this is where external signals become really important. So you can get to the first page or to the very top of the second page just by having really good content and really solid fundamentals on the site. So your on-page optimization is done, because that's a lot of times when you reference it against your competitors, that's all they really have. So Google goes, oh, okay, they got some really informative content. It's not just commercial intent. It's not talking about being a plumber and manager. It's talking about how, what, when, whys, how to fix this. And they've got an article about things you need to look at on a stove. So they're going, okay, well, there's a lot of signals here that are saying that these guys deserve to be clicked, because basically anything on the second page is not getting clicked. So, so where it's month 6, you're on the second page. What happens then is it starts to look for external trust signals. It goes, okay, well, we got you to this point based on what you're telling us. We now want the market to tell us what they think of your site. So it starts to, I mean, it's doing this the whole time, but it starts to, you have what's called a document, which is like Google's way of tracking all this information about a business. So in this document, it's documenting external sources that are linking to us. It's saying, oh, look, you've got a local supplier and they've put you on their website. Next thing, the Google goes, okay, well, we trust this local supplier, and he's saying that Jimmy's a bloody gun plumber and mandarin. Okay, well, we're going to count that as a tick in a box from a trust signal. It's like being down the pub, and this is the best way to explain it, actually. It's like you're down the pub, right? And you go down the pub, which is a search, and there's all kinds of randoms in there. And you go, oh, Charlie, mate, do you know a good plumber? And Charlie, who's an SEO, he goes, yes, yeah, this plumber here, he's really good. If you are Google and there's the old fella that's been a plumber for 35 years and goes, oh, Jimmy, this is actually the best plumber. That's kind of what it's like. The old fella in the back of the room that's been there for 35 years, you want as many of those old fellas telling everyone that you're the best plumber in town. So Lucas has got a quick question here. I assume this occurs for each keyword you wish to be found under. Bounce around 100%. You need to treat, that's why we talk about cohorts and clusters, because it's not necessarily, it's almost impossible to track every single keyword you rank for. So when most SEOs will talk in like a cluster of keywords based around a page. So we're trying to rank for like block drains in Mandra. Generally, most SEOs will have a block drain page. And then the 50 or 60 keywords it ranks for will be a cluster, because they'll collectively, because those rankings will generally show the same page. They will all kind of move up and down together. So we work in a cluster like SEO Mandra. We rank number 1 for that, but we probably rank for like SEO Mandra, SEO's Mandra, SEO agency Mandra, SEO best looking SEO in Mandra. Things like that. We rank for a cluster of keywords around it. So, this cluster of keywords is on the second page. It starts looking for the old fella at the back of the bar saying that Jimmy's a top bloke. Now, this is why it's important to have contextually relevant backlinks. At a pub, I don't know if you guys spend much time at the pub, but there's always one smartass that just talks too much at every pub. Now, that is like a backlink that just comes from any source. The guy that talks a lot, he makes a lot of noise, so people listen to him. But is the person that's looking for a plumber going to listen to him when he says, oh yeah, this plumber, this plumber, this plumber, this plumber, this plumber, this plumber? He recommends 7. Google's just going to ignore that. That's why contextually relevant backlinks, you want the old guy sitting at the back of the pub, not the guy at the pub that just talks all the time and just tells everyone and screams it at the top of his lungs because he's pissed. So you want quality contextual backlinks, so you get a few of these signals coming to you, press releases where you tell Google that something amazing's happened to the business, like you've opened a second location, or you've redone your website, or John's gone from an apprentice to this to a quite trade qualified. Google looks at these news sites, because the news sites is like Gandor. It's like they're so authoritative that if Gandalf speaks, everyone listens, right? So you get those signals, and then next thing you're in the first page. You're at the bottom of the first page, and then Google goes, okay, well you're in the mix now. You're in the big leagues. So Ben's just got a quick question. Do Google reviews affect rankings? It depends who you ask. It honestly does. I don't personally think they affect rankings. There's some SEOs that think it does. It's not technically a ranking factor in Google's guidelines, so it's not. But what it does affect is your conversion rate, which any good SEO worth their salt will take into account. So, when you look at a company, when you're doing an SEO campaign, you look holistically. You don't just look at what keywords they're trying to rank for. You look, okay, well, if I get you the traffic, are you going to be able to turn that into business to be able to justify the exorbitant amount that SEOs charge? And ranking factor, reviews, your brand perception, social media, they're all important because that helps convert the traffic that we're sending. Okay, so we're back. We're on the first page. And generally what happens is there's a thing called velocity of movement. So as you're lower in the rankings, you may jump 30 spots at a time. You may jump 50 spots at a time. As you get into the first page, those jumps become 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and you don't move as much. The velocity slows down. So you have a very high velocity at the start, and then the velocity slows down as you get into the point where traffic is actually doing it, because Google wants to send cohorts of traffic to the site to test how you benchmark from a user experience perspective against the other people in the search result, or authoritative standpoint. There's different interpretations of what actually causes that. So you get into the top results. You may one day look and you'll be in position 7. You may go in 10 minutes later, you might be in position 9. And then, so basically it's we're 8 months in now. 8 to 9 will be going from position 9, so bottom of the first page, to position 7. 9 to 10 might be going from position 7 to position 5. The next month might be going from position 4 to position 3, and then position 2 to 1. Generally, the top 3 positions very rarely change. By that point, it's done that much testing on you. If you're in the top 3 positions of a page, it doesn't change them, because that you can have a negative effect on user experience from a Google's perspective if you're constantly switching the results that people need to see. Because people type into Google and try and find Plumber Mandra, they go back and do something, they expect to see the same thing in those results. So that's why it's so hard to get the top 3 positions in Google, is because Google's put those people there for a reason. It may not be a reason that we as SEOs explicitly think they should be there for, but there's something that Google likes that they do that is intangible, that, quite frankly, you can do everything you can possibly from an SEO perspective. They may just have they might just have 10 Gandalfs that you don't know about going, they are the best plumber in Mandra. Sometimes you can't beat that. But generally what happens after about 12 to 18 months, you will be in the position you're going to be. There's no moving it from there. And why SEO takes so that answers the first question on why SEO takes so long. It's just because at its core, it's trying to give people the best user experience possible. But the second question I get asked all the time, which follows into that, is, why aren't I seeing results after 6 months? And that purely comes down to the way that websites are built. So you got to remember that if we treat each page as a cohort of keywords, generally a website, all the pages are built at exactly the same time. If you were to stagger the building of the pages month by month, or you would build some early and then build them over time, you would see the traction happen over a longer period of time. Over happening earlier or later, but more consistent. Most SEO graphs you look at, what you'll see is basically nothing, and then all of a sudden it goes like a parabolic curve upwards, because all those pages hit the top results around the same time. So whenever I talk to a client, because I always get it, after about 6 months, a client wants to see me because they're not getting results. It's like clockwork. And I have to explain to them that the reason this is because the process doesn't change whether you're trying to rank for Plumber Mandra or disco plumber repairs of discos in Mandra. One's more competitive than the other. One may get to the top spots further, but the pages were all built at the same time. They all go through the same process. So that's ultimately why SEO takes so long, and ultimately why you don't see results. Now, the positive side of this and why people do SEO is because once you're in those top results, it's actually very difficult to for a competitor to take you out of them. So I've got clients that I've gotten top results in very competitive keywords, and they've been there for years and years without really doing much keeping there, because once you're in those top results, it's actually the onus of the people below you to show they have a better user experience. So if you've worked your way through those results and gotten the top results, then there's a very good chance you're going to keep them for a long time, because it takes someone like myself to do that with someone else for 18 months to push you off it, to even have a shot pushing it off it. So what we do with a lot of our clients is it's like a rocket. SEO is very much like a rocket. You know, if you got a, let's say, I always tell people with SEO, like your retainer is like a lump sum paid over X amount of months. That's the best way to think about SEO. Then that fuel, that money is the fuel inside the rocket. Now, when a rocket takes off, almost 80% of all of its fuel is used getting out of orbit, getting out of the atmosphere. The other 20% is to get it to orbit and keep it in orbit. SEO is much like that. We're basically taking a rocket off the ground and putting it into orbit. So all the fuel, all the energy is used at the start. You're not getting as much speed. You're burning a lot of fuel, not getting much speed. And then all of a sudden you're in orbit and you're doing 1,000 miles an hour, 10,000 miles an hour, whatever they do. SEO is much like that. Now, that's why when we do SEO, we charge a high retainer at the start, and then we significantly drop the retainer once it's in orbit, once it's at those spots, because all we're doing then is just maintaining its orbit, keeping it in orbit, because eventually if you don't, this is when people say SEO, you've got to constantly do it. This is what they mean. It's like, you can't just rank something number one and then just leave it. You've got to constantly be feeding signals, but you don't have to feed as many. You don't have to do as much to keep it there once it's in that spot. So that's always good to know. But like, yeah, so you're keeping this thing in orbit. And what we're actually doing, so we charge like a quarter of normally of what we charge as a full retainer, because it takes a quarter of the work basically. What we're doing is like, we're sitting there with a pair of like binoculars in the spaceship, just looking for anyone that's launching rockets. That's ultimately my job as an SEO when someone's ranking really well, is like keeping an eye for who's actually making a concert. You know, I'm an American spaceship in orbit, so Elon Musk's spaceship, and the Chinese are launching a rocket. It's like, okay, well, we better keep an eye on that just in case it runs into us. You know, what are they trying to target? Are they trying to go over there, or are they trying to take what we're trying to take? And that's when we become more active. So like, I'll be watching the SERP results of clients that are ranking really well for results, and I'm just keeping an eye on the competitors and their movement through the ranks. And if someone's like pushing through the ranks, making those big 30, 50, 40, 50 position moves, then I will go ahead and actually start to go to my client and go, look, we need to send some more fuel up here, mate. These guys are going to try and take our orbit here. We got to make sure that we bolster our position. And ultimately, it's a lot easier to poke it. You know, if anyone knows military like war, it's a lot easier to have the high ground and poke or fight downwards than it is to fight upwards. So you don't actually need as much to maintain those results as someone that's trying to fight up a hill as you are on top of the hill in position one, poking your sticks down at the people that are coming up the hill. So I always say to people, even if you don't necessarily need to rank for SEO now, you should always consider it, because the easiest time you're going to have getting on top of that hill is when no one's sitting on there, or the people that have been sitting on there have been sitting on there forever and they're complacent. That is the best time to sneak in through the back and take the hill. And then it's up to them to try and get back up. And that takes some, in some industries, that takes some people years and years to realize that they've lost those results. Those results meant a lot to them from a money perspective, realize what's happened, and then hire someone like myself to try and fix it. That can take years and years, but the job for that person is 10 times harder, so the job you had to get that result was easier. The job they have to get the result back is 10 times harder if you do it properly. So that's ultimately why SEO takes so long. That's why people are confused about, it's 6 months in there, like, I'm not seeing results. And that's why SEO is still done, because it's very valuable. Once you're sitting on those hills, let's say, for instance, you've paid $30,000 lifetime to get that first result. And let's say that first result's giving you 10 inquiries a month. Every inquiry you get once that rocket's in orbit is reducing the cost per inquiry. So yeah, you're paying that first inquiry, you paid $30,000 for that inquiry. But the 30,000th inquiry you get by being in that first result, you pay $1 for that inquiry. You get what I mean? Like, whereas with Google Ads, it's more of a linear spend over time, because if you need more traffic, you pay for it. Whereas with SEO, once you're in those results, yeah, the traffic, you can't control how much traffic is there when you hit the top, but every time someone goes to your site, it's costing you less and less as opposed to more and more. So, most SEOs worth their salt will try and do SEO with Google Ads as well, because it does a good job of filling the middle in. But just, that's probably the most comprehensive I'm ever going to talk about SEO to people that aren't SEOs. Obviously, there's a lot more nuts and bolts when it comes to SEO, but really what makes SEO complex is that everyone has different ideas about what the signals need to be to give to Google. That is what makes SEO super complex. Google, by design, doesn't want SEOs to manipulate their search results. What we do is kind of frowned upon by Google, but ignored. They know that it's a part of their ecosystem, but they don't like us. They don't like SEOs. They don't like what we do, because we're actively trying to break what they build and trying to manipulate it. So they constantly have to update what they do to keep ahead of the people that are trying to manipulate it. So what Google has done is, so they have this thing called Pagerank, which is their core algorithm, which takes all these 200 ranking factors, consolidates and puts different weightings to them for different results and personalized. It's basically the thing that separated Google from Yahoo, Alta Vista, and it's why Google won. But that's like one of those, that's like Colonel Sanders' secret recipe. It's behind vaults. There's only a few people that know it. There's only a core group of Googlers that actually work on it, and they're very, very high up in the business. But what they do, what happened about 7 years ago is they have to manually review stuff still. The algorithm doesn't get it right all the time. And so these algorithms flag spam, they flag results that they don't think they should be there. The same way the ATO does. The ATO looks at your tax return and goes, by a computer, and goes, oh, we're flagging this because this doesn't seem right. There's robots that crawl the internet all the time, and that's all they do is find websites that they don't think should be in the results, flag them for manual review. And these manual reviews were done to a guideline. So there's a thing called a quality raters guideline, or a Google guideline, that these manual reviewers use to try and remove as much bias as possible. So they tell you in this raters guideline, they tell you what makes a good website. They tell you what makes a good backlink. They tell you what makes good content. They tell you what adds value, what detracts value. And then the manual rater goes through and like benchmarks your site and goes, they can actually just manually move your result or penalize you based off that. Now, this got leaked. This document, which was supposed to be a really internal secret document, got leaked. And then Google said, well, you know what? You can all have it. Like, there's no use us trying to stop this. You can all have it. And so Google released this. And what that did is it gave all us SEOs an insight to what Google looks for as part of its algorithm. Like what it put in this book is what its algorithm looks for. But what it didn't do is told you what was important and what was not. It just listed all the things. So this book, and I hope I don't upset anyone talking about religion, but this book kind of became the Bible of SEOs, because it was like everything before that was just like conjecture and like was just guesswork. You know, we're all kind of just guessing based on off experiments we do. But this book basically told us the 200 and whatever ranking factors that Google uses to determine if a website should be in the first position. It didn't tell us the weighting. So that book is like religion, is like the Bible. Now, the thing with the Bible, you have Christianity, you have Catholics, you have Protestants, you have, I'm not a religious guy, but like, you know, there's several religions, or there's so many religions based off the Bible itself that are different interpretations of it. And that's what SEO is like. You have white hats, black hats, gray hats, silver hats. You have all these people that interpret different text passages of that book, interprets it as different things in different weights. And that's what separates all the SEOs. So there's some SEOs out there that just believe the only thing Google cares about is trust. So they'll build heaps of backlinks. Like all they'll do is backlinks. They don't care about content. They don't care about on-page. It's just about the sheer number of people yelling out that this site is the best plumber in Mandurah. Then there's people like myself and Charlie that believe that it's somewhere in between. It's like, you know, Google believes that good content's really important, but it also needs signals. And then there's white hats that believe that we need to follow the guidelines and the things that Google says to the T, There's no deviating from what Google says. If they don't want us to do guest posting, we don't do guest posting. And then there's everything in between, and that's your Christian and Catholic and all that. It's all interpretations of the same book. And it's hard as a consumer to know where your SEO sits on that spectrum, because like, how do you determine that if you're not an SEO? But that's why SEO is so freaking difficult for a consumer to purchase, because it'd be like you going and having all the religions lined up in front of you, and you, let's say you're in the market, you want to become religious, right? It'd be like having every religion lined up in front of you, and them all going, yeah, come, Christians, we're cool, man. We got the fish, like that's what it's like. And then you would like decide, you're like, well, whatever path I'm going down, it's not like I can just go, yeah, I'm not a Christian anymore. You got to go down that path. So like, that's what it's like, and it's, I feel sorry for consumers, because like, I like to think the way we do it is I'm very pragmatic, and the way I determine whether the way we do SEO from a guidelines perspective is right is based on results. But then people do get results in certain niches with certain other ways of doing it. But yeah, guys, obviously that's a pretty deep dive into SEO, but it's not, I suppose ultimately SEO is not dark magic. It's not black magic. It was 10 years ago, but it's not now. Google tells us exactly what they want, and they're very transparent about the things they expect from people. If you had the time, inclination, and money, the reason it doesn't happen is because no one's willing to pay enough to do it. But if someone paid me $15,000 a month, $20,000 a month, I would do every single thing the guideline told me to, and you would be almost guaranteed to rank, almost 100% guaranteed. But as SEOs, you can also rank by not doing it all. But again, it's like you could follow those guidelines that Google set out from start to finish, and you'll probably outrank all of us. But the amount of time, energy, and effort it would take to do it just doesn't make it practical sense. All right, so that's enough about SEO. If you have questions about SEO, let me know. We'll answer them as we go. So if you leave a question or you want to jump in, I left a link in the chat, or your questions will come up on the side here, like Ben's, and then I can answer them as we go. So the next question I wanted to cover today is, where should I start as a business if I want to do marketing? It really depends. Like, it depends on the type of business you have. Ultimately, that's what decides it. So, you can roughly put businesses into buckets. That's the way I try and do it when I sell our services, is I try and put them into buckets. So you have service-based businesses in one bucket, but then in that bucket, if you split that bucket down the middle, you have like transactional and transactional and relationship-based service businesses, or professional and blue collar. You can split that bucket down the middle. And then in the next bucket, you have products and e-commerce, and then you can split that down the middle as well. And then they're really the two main buckets I use. And then there's a third bucket for everything else. But it really depends on where you sit in the bucket to determine what you actually do as a marketer. So like, I'll use the example I use all the time, which is plumbers, which I love because it's very black and white what a plumber needs to do to generate business. It's a service-based business. It's transactional. It relies heavily on search, because a lot of people don't necessarily know a plumber in the network, and if they do, they don't necessarily know if they do what they need them to do. So 99% of people will type in Plumber Mandra, and it's about ranking for Plumber Mandra. It's about driving traffic from Plumber Mandra, black and white. But let's say you are a property manager, is a great example of that. A property manager is a very relationship-based service. It's a service like anything else. It's like a plumber. It's like a hydraulic company, but it's a relationship-based service, and it's not really a transactional service. It is in the fact that you pay someone to do a service, but a lot of it is relationships, and a lot of the point of difference between people is relationships. So traditionally, how most property managers get their business is referrals. People use them, they tell others about it, because the consumer, that's how they actually make a decision on a non-transactional relationship-based service. So like my online guy, for instance, referrals is our main source of leads by a long shot. Because what happens is people go onto forums, on the Facebook groups, and they go, oh, I need a website. Does anyone know a good person to build websites? And then 36 people message. But like if you're a property manager, someone in a group or in a forum or in wherever where people hang out, pub, someone goes, oh, do you know a good property manager? I'm thinking of myself in my home. Do you know a good property manager? Most people search like that, find a property manager like that. A very, very small portion of people will type in property managers Mandurah. So SEO doesn't necessarily make sense to be the first thing you do in marketing, as a business like that. Ultimately, the first thing you should be doing as a property manager is increasing the size of that ring of referrals that you have. And then the second thing you should be doing is building a second tier of referrals around that. So what I mean by that is like, you should be amplifying the effects of the work you do so that more people recognize what you do, so more people can refer you. So that's content, that's social media, that's content production, that's answering questions, it's YouTube. Didn't mention search in there anywhere. It's a website, it's Google My Business listing. It's not SEO because that doesn't increase the referral ring. And then I would always suggest to a property manager, once you get that first ring honed in, work on the second ring of referrals. And what I mean by that is, anecdotally, we are exactly the same as a property manager. We are based around referrals. It's a very relationship-based industry if you do it the way we do. So about 8 months ago, this second ring of referrals came to fruition. And basically what that was I got a phone. So we built a website for a customer, for a client. He was obviously happy with it. We were happy with it. About 4 months later, I get a phone call going, oh, g'day, Jimmy. It's it's Michael here. I was like, oh, g'day, Michael. How you doing? Oh, sorry about that. G'day, Michael. It's, how you doing? And then he goes, oh, look, Trent referred me to you. He said you do good work. I was like, well, I've never worked with a Trent, but hey, I'll take it. And then once I did a bit of digging to find out where it was, I found out that Trent was the brother of the wife of the person we built the website for. So that's technically what I call a second ring of referral, because I didn't know them directly, but the work we did and our branding and whatever we did was enough to get a person that has never met us to tell someone else about us. And that's what creates a viral loop. So a lot of our work now, I would say like 30% of our work comes from a second ring of referrals that comes from the first ring of work. So for us, like I can use myself as an example because we're like a property manager. I spent the first year and a half of this agency building up our ring of referrals and our second ring of referrals. And only now, 2.5 years, and by nature, we did SEO as well because I believe it's important to do what you preach. So we have a good SEO presence as well. But I would say that only generates 1 in 10 inquiries. Everything else comes from referrals. And then, so now that we have a very solid referral ring, our brand's strong, it's got recognition because I get it all the time, people recognizing the brand. We're a known brand, I would like to say. We are now going to focus on outbound engagement and outbound reach. So actively hunting people down, because now I can hunt someone down cold and they can see all of this brand work that's been done and this referral work and all these people mentioning us and talking about us that will amplify the conversation that we have now. Whereas if I was to flip it around and started with direct outreach and trying to reach people that don't necessarily need a service, they're a prospect, it probably wouldn't have the same effect because they wouldn't know me from a bar of soap and there wouldn't be any reference point to whether I do good or bad work. Whereas now, that person may be connected to them, and if they mention my name in their travels, it may get back to them that we do good work. So it's not necessarily, I think at some point, as a business, you have to do every form of marketing. You'd be naive to think that you can get away with not doing SEO at some point in the future. There'll be some critical juncture where SEO becomes a priority. But I think that where businesses get discombobulated and confused is they don't understand the priority on which they should do this stuff. They listen to Ty Lopez or they listen to someone talk at a function and say, oh, you need to do SEO. And they come to me and they say they need to do SEO. And I'm like, why do you need to do SEO? Whereas a lot of companies will just take your money and do SEO for you. But like almost all the time, it's not necessarily that you don't need to do SEO. It's just you don't need to do it right now. It needs to be relative to the phase in which your business is in. And that's always my bellwether. Is like I always try and tell people that. So if I was a new business and I was trying to work out where to start in marketing, I would really have a think about how I used to, because you probably come from another job potentially, or you've met people. I would seriously consider where that business has come from in the previous business or in my circle of friends or my network, and then try and amplify that because it works. So the next question is how to tell if my Google ads are performing. This is a good question. I put this one in personally. The other ones I got asked. This one I put in personally. And the reason for that is it's a personal bugbear of mine when people come to me and tell me, oh, our Google ads is doing well because we're getting lots of clicks. That is like from a top order level, one of the worst metrics you can track as a business to determine whether your paid advertising or Google ads is performing well, because it's so easy to manipulate. Really, ultimately, so as a business, if you're doing Google ads, there's ultimately three things you should be tracking. You should be tracking ROI, which is your return on ad spend minus your expenses. Your ROAS, which is your return on ad spend, which is basically what you spend on your ads based on the revenue you generate. So like if you spend $1,000 on your ad spend and then $100 on fees and you generate 11 grand, your ROAS will be 10. So for every dollar you spend, you're making $10 in revenue. Now ROI is you're making $10 in revenue and you're making $3 in net profit. And then you can go for every dollar I spend, I make $3 in net profit. That's ROI, the difference between ROAS and ROI. And the third thing I suggest people track is a thing called quality score. Now, I would say 80% of the Google Ads people that do Google Ads won't even mention quality score because it's not a metric that Google likes people to know that exists. But basically what quality score is Google's a smart company. They know that almost all of their revenue comes from Google Ads. $70 billion a year in profit comes from Google Ads for Google. So they want to protect this and they want to protect the integrity of these results because ultimately they know that if you are searching for a plumber in Mandurah and you click an ad and you get a plumber in Mandurah and it's like what you need and you engage with them and you get a good result, then there's a good chance you're going to click on an ad in the future. They have data, they have whole rooms full of data scientists that are very smart that ultimately their job is to work out how to get people to click on ads and then ultimately how to get businesses to pay more for them. They go to work and that is their only job. So if we keep that in the back of our mind that Google knows that it's in its best interest to serve the best ad that's got the best chance of getting a click and a conversion because that's a good user experience, they're going to click an ad again. Well, it lends itself to say that if you have a bad ad, then they really should be charging you more for that because it's taking the spot of an ad that could be helping them get more clicks in the future and more be able to charge businesses in the future. You put a poor ad in a spot that could be taken up by a good ad, Google knows that person may never click an ad again. They may get that bad an experience from that they may never click an ad again. So what they do is they have a thing called quality score, which is a confluence of the ad copy, the ad copy, the relevance, the click-through rate of that ad, the landing page relevance, and then the conversion rate. They're a confluence together to make this number. The ratios change based on the results, things like that. But basically, ultimately, what it does as a number is if you have a high quality score, say over 8, your ad costs will significantly reduce when compared to someone that has a quality score of say 4, because they know that if you have a high quality score, we can give you a discount on your ads because we're going to make it up in the next time that person clicks an ad. Whereas if you have a bad ad that doesn't meet those standards and it's like say a quality score of 4, they know that, or 2 or 1 or 0, they know that, well, we're going to charge you an extra 50% to try and make up the amount that person has lost, the amount that Google has lost. So quality score is actually the single most important metric. That and cost per acquisition But like your quality score determines your cost per acquisition, because if you have a higher quality score, then you pay less for your ads and you acquire people cheaper. And that's why some companies can seem to run ads for everything. And then some companies run ads and they're paying $200 a click. It's because they're working with companies that base their metrics off cost per clicks, not quality score. So ROAS, ROI, quality score, cost per acquisition. When you talk to a Google Ads company, mention those 4 things. And if they can't explain what quality, they don't have to explain it as well as I do, but if they can't explain what quality score does as a cause and effect, as in like increasing or decreasing your costs, and how to turn it on, because by default, you can't see it. You've got to turn it on. So if you're going to measure a metric that you don't even know exists, then I feel like it's someone that's just done a course with no practical experience. So that's what I would be measuring. ROAS, ROI, cost per acquisition, and quality score. Who gives a shit about how much your clicks are? Like if I was to tell you you're going to pay $10,000 for that click, but you're going to get a 30% ROI on that, so you're going to make, so if it's $10,000, you're going to make $3,000 for every time someone clicks on that. Are you really going to care that it costs you $10,000? No, because it's about what the return on that investment is, not what it costs to do. And that's marketing in general. It's like, yeah, SEO is expensive, but what's the return on investment of having a asset that constantly has a decreasing cost per acquisition? So that's how I answer that question. So do people keep saying you should be on TikTok? So like as a business owner, I get a lot, oh, Jimmy, you should be on TikTok. And I'm sure you as a business owner get one of the young fellas in the plumbing business going, oh, we should do a TikTok, right? Now, if you're like me, you didn't grow up with TikTok. So, but I'm going to make an assumption here that you at least know what TikTok is, because I'm going to have to explain it otherwise. But so as a business, should you be on TikTok? This is my personal thoughts. I said to you from the very start that you should be on every platform. And I still stand by that. At some point, this agency will be doing TikTok, and we'll be doing dances or whatever it takes to rank, to do well on TikTok. It is inevitable. Where it gets prioritized in this business is what changes. So I would say that don't write TikTok off, because you never know how you're going to find your business. Next thing you're a property manager, right? Let's say you're a property manager and you're not on TikTok because you don't use it, so you don't like it, so you don't use it. But let's say hypothetically, for instance, the 16-year-old daughter of someone that's got a $7 million home overhears that their parents, or they've been told that their parents are selling their home, and she's on TikTok and she sees that you relate to her, and because she's entitled and spoiled or whatever, because she's probably, if their parents have got a $7 million home, who knows? But like, she goes, Dad, you should use them. If you're looking for someone, she sounds really good. Next thing, that channel could generate you well and truly more than what it costs to do the dance or whatever, right? So like, you don't ever write channels off because you don't use them. I learned that lesson with Facebook. I don't really use Facebook much, but it's still important to be on Facebook because it's where our demographic is. And that's what determines whether you should be on TikTok or not, or not determines if you should be, because you should be on TikTok. It determines when you go to TikTok, or when you go to a new platform, or when you try something, is your demographic. So like, if you're a professional service, like if you're a lawyer, and you work with business owners, then I would be prioritizing LinkedIn over TikTok. But if I was selling consumer goods and my demographic was under the age of 30, I would be prioritizing TikTok over LinkedIn. See what I mean? It really depends on where your demographic sits and it's like Snapchat. It's really a young person's game. So if I had a product that was aimed at millennials or people, or the younger demographic or whatever, or the end user was that, I would be like this agency. We would have started with TikTok. We wouldn't have worried. We wouldn't be doing this live stream. I'd be doing Snapchats and I'd be dancing all over TikTok. It's just how it just depends on where it fits into the demographics that you're trying to target. But ultimately, you should be doing it though. It just might be something that you do 2 years from now, when you started exhausting other channels and they're not as effective anymore, you might go to something like TikTok as your next point of acquisition. All right, so I'm going to get through these quick. I'm actually sweating real bad now. Clint, do a dance for us now. That's a hard no. I'm going to save the dancing for when I'm on TikTok. So what's the difference between Google ads and Facebook ads? Fundamentally, it's a way it interacts with people. So bloody TikTok, Clint. So Google ads is a very, very targeted approach to marketing. So when you run a Google ad, you pick the specific search you want to rank for, show up for, and you target it. So it relies a lot more on hard data to determine that. It's not necessarily about psychographics, it's about demographics. So like if you have an elderly person, let's say you're selling toilet seats for the elderly and your demographics over the age of 70, let's say for instance, you may actually use toilet seat or dunny. Whereas if your demographic is like 20 years old, you might change the actual search terms that you do based on the demographic. But it's very intent driven. It's all about intent. So like if someone's searching for dunny seats, you doing Google ads will try and rank for it. Where that differs from Facebook ads is more about being front of mind when they're ready to make a decision. So you can't necessarily target someone on Facebook looking for dunny seats because it's almost impossible to do. But you can target the psychographics and demographics. Let's say it's those old people, it's an elderly dunny seat, and that that's your demographic. And if I put this in front of them when they're ready to buy a dunny seat, or when I give them an offer, there's a good chance they're going to purchase. You will use the psychographics of that demographic to determine your ad, determine where it's placed, and determine who it goes to. So psychographics is an interesting one because you would think, on the surface, you would target. This is what separates someone that does Facebook ads very well and someone that just does them okay. Is you would think on the surface, if I was going to sell dunny ads, I wasn't thinking about it too much, I would just pick the age of between 60 and 75 or whatever my age bracket is, and maybe people that like forward driving. That's about as far as I would go. Now, someone that does Google Facebook ads really good, notwithstanding the technical stuff like lookalike audience and stuff, but just from a psychographic perspective, I'll use a real life example. We do the ads for a company called Drift School, and they sell drift based experiences. So you learn how to drift around a track. Now last month we got them a 70 ROAS. For every dollar they spend, they get $70 in revenue. They don't complain, let's put it that way. How we got that is 99% of marketers will just target people between the age of 25 and 40 that like driving. That's like your superficial psychographic. What we did is go, okay, well, who's going to enjoy these experiences? We got rev heads, people that want to just thrash a car. And then you got guys like myself, white collar guys that live pretty mundane, boring lives that want to do something. If they're going to do an experience, they want something. They're not going to want to go do archery. They're going to want to get a thrill, go bungee jumping, skydiving stuff. So we go, okay, well, they're two separate demographics and psychographics, but they have the same ad basically, just with different copy. That's where most people stop. But what we did is go, okay, well, I'm a blue collar, a rev head, love my cars. So yeah, we target cars, but we also target what bands do they like? What, if I'm a blue collar worker, I probably like Russell Coit. I probably like, four-wheel drive adventures. I probably like a certain type of fishing rod. I probably like summer gnats. I probably like Bathurst. That's actually how you do Facebook ads properly. It's not about the superficial males between 25 and 50 and that like cars. It's about, okay, I'm a white collar guy. So I'm a white collar guy. I have different interests generally than most rev head nutheads. I might like Law and Order SUV, Special Victim. I might like The Wire TV show. I might like, computers and technology. So you would target the ads at people that are between these ages that are male, that like computers, not males that like cars. You would target males that like maybe a comedian that's a little bit more better spoken. You would target people that, white collar guys, they like, maybe people that target NFL because NFL requires a cable subscription and cable subscriptions are expensive. And generally a white collar person will have more expensive taste. Maybe they like sailing. Maybe they like this. That's how you actually get good results with ads. And anyone that's doing your ads that's not targeting at a very psychological level, notwithstanding the lookalike audiences and feeding data into Facebook, is gonna pay a lot for their ads. So the reason we get such a high return on ad spend for Drift School is because we don't pay much for the ads. So he has a ticket item that's worth $500 and we pay cents per thousand to target them because we're showing an ad that the demographic wants to see. So they're not saying they don't want to see this ad and they're responding well to it because no other experience company is targeting it. Like if I was if I had bungee jumping or kite surfing or something, I'd be targeting exactly the same demographic as I'm targeting with Drift School because it's the same person. It's the same. I'm the dude that they're targeting with this stuff. I have $500 to spend on drifting around a track, but I don't like Bathurst. I like Bathurst, but it's not one of my likes. It's not one of my affinities. I don't sit there and watch burnout videos all day. I don't sit there and watch Russell Coit. I know of him, but I don't have an affinity to him. I don't sit there and watch Housos. I watch Joe Rogan podcasts. I use computers. I like computer games. I like, Billions, the TV show. I like Gary Vee. That's the stuff that you target. And I think that's where, if you have a product, you really need to think about not the superficial stuff like, I'm selling cricket bats, I'm going to target people that like cricket. No, you need to target people that like sport, that like, four drives, whatever that demographic is. So that's the difference between two. Google, it's all about knowing the intent and the transaction and knowing that if I'm looking for a plumber and manager, how am I going to walk through that process so that I show up for that result when you click it? And then Facebook ads are for showing up when you have a specific intent that you're trying to cover. Trying to basically read their mind and read the right person. And then the final question is, how do you know you're getting value from your agency? It's almost an impossible question to answer because everyone values things differently. But I think if you work with an agency that communicates this stuff to you, and if you ask these questions of them, they're willing to answer them and take the time to teach you the value of what they're offering because they're proud of what they do, I think that's a good bellwether. So like if I was a business looking for a marketing company, I would be asking them, how do Google ads work? And they go, I'm so glad you asked. I don't get asked this enough. Like Google ads, they do this, this, and this. It doesn't have to be succinct and whatever as I'm saying. I've been doing this a long time, but like if they just even show an interest in what they do and they're very proud and passionate about what they know about the topic, I think that's a really good sign. Whereas if you go to someone and you ask them, how does Google Ads work? And he goes, no, that's for us to worry about. Don't worry about it. You'll get the reports and I don't know if I would want to work with someone like that because when you ask someone, how does it work? You're not asking because you want to do Google Ads. You're asking out of a genuine interest. And I want to work with people that have a genuine interest in what I do so that we can have adult conversations and genuine conversations about, and me feel like I'm educating and teaching people how to do this stuff. Because ultimately, I don't want someone paying me hundreds of thousands of dollars forever. I do. But nothing pleases me more knowing that someone understands this space, which is deliberately designed to be complex by people that are trying to rip people off. They understand it better because they're just slightly educated. If you go to market with the slightest bit, if you took what I told you guys today and took that to market by going, I need marketing, and you go to the person and go, what's the difference between Facebook ads and Google ads? And they can't give you an answer. And then I was able, off the cuff in real time, give you a 25-minute answer on what the difference is. That is the difference between a good agency and a good marketer and a marketer that's not very good, in my opinion. And that's going to piss people off, but it's the truth. You know, it's like if I was to buy, you know, I'm doing this drift school, right? You know, I'm loving it. But if the guy that's teaching me how to drift has just read a manual and said, oh, you drift by turning the wheel and doing this, and then something goes wrong, and then he can't go, oh, no, you need to turn the car this way because it's not doing what it's supposed to. Do I really want them teaching me how to do it? Do I really want to be sitting next to them in a car and drifting if they really don't know how it actually works from a fundamental level? No. Same thing applies to everything. You wouldn't want a driving instructor teaching you how to drive if they had no experience driving a car, because you could teach someone how to drive a car by just reading a manual and going, you need to turn the steering wheel this way and the indicators here. But if a car pulls out in front of you, you want someone that's going to hit the brake because they've been in that experience before and they know that actually this is the way you stop a car in this environment. The book doesn't teach you this stuff. That's what separates good people from bad people in any industry. So I would ultimately take that away as the delineator between a good and a bad agency, is that if they're not passionate about what they do and they don't believe in educating, they don't want to tell you everything they know because they're proud of what they know about marketing, then to me, they don't really actually care about marketing. They just care about turning $1 into $2. That is the difference between a professional and a professional that knows their craft and treats it like a profession, and someone that just like flies in and does it and flies out. And it's why marketers have such a bad name, is because no business owners don't do enough diligence when they talk to marketers. All it would take is follow 5 or 6 marketers that do this, that take the time to educate. And if one of you guys, business owners, came to me and go, Jimmy, I don't need you, I don't need your service, but look, I was just interested in how Google Ads works, and I've had several people do this to me, I will spend an hour of my time at no cost to you teaching you the basics of Google Ads, because ultimately it may save you money in the long run. And I appreciate the gesture of you being a business owner and taking personal responsibility for the fact that you can't just palm this off to any old idiot. You should really do some diligence before you do it. You know, you don't buy a $30,000 forklift without at least, you don't just walk into a forklift shop and go, oh mate, I want that forklift because it's pretty. You go, I need a forklift. This is what it needs to do. I don't need to necessarily know the nuts and bolts of how the forklift operates, but it needs to go up and it needs to go down and it needs to reach this height. No one in the marketing, or very few businesses in the marketing space, take the time to actually scope out what they need from a marketer. The best conversation I could have with a business is if a business goes to me, look, Jimmy, I don't necessarily know from a marketing perspective what we need, but this is what we're trying to achieve. What are your thoughts? Okay, why do you think Google Ads will work here? Oh, because of this, this, and this. Oh, okay, well, what about Facebook? This, this, and this. Jimmy, you make a lot of sense. Because I have a bit of cursory knowledge. We're good to go. I understand, you understand, I understand that you know what I'm talking about. I understand that you know, vice versa, and we're good to go. So ultimately, that's what I would be doing. But guys, I'm freaking boiling away here. I'm actually sweating. And I always end up getting heated about this topic specifically because it grinds my gears, basically. Take ownership as a business owner and some personal responsibility for the fact that you got ripped off. It wouldn't have happened if you'd taken a bit of time to educate yourself on the market. So guys, thanks once again for tuning in. Hopefully you found it interesting. I'll do it next week. I'm going to try and do this one on a Friday. The Frothy Fridays are what everyone knows me for. So I'm going to continue to do them. Have a great evening, afternoon. Try and get a beer in there if you can. And try and stay cool if you're in WA. And stay safe as always in these uncertain times. All right, thanks once again, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.